Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. It's NFL Week 1. Gonna go through a few games in this video. Definitely not gonna get through them all. I mean, these Week 1 games, I'm just doing off-season roster turnover, and it doesn't really feel like I'm handicapping a game. Not really what I love to do, but obviously it's the NFL. We're back. Like I'm excited to watch it. I have some bets open. It's just I like analyzing data. I like analyzing performance on the field, and it's not really what we're doing here. So this is kind of just like roster turnover, and I'll share a few bets. On the live show, we'll go through every single game at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're able to make it, love to see you in the comments. NFL Week 1, it's Sunday. I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points? I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit. Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly. Dog walking. I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get the sauce. Bucks Falcons rewind a week, and this one's sitting at Atlanta plus 2.5. Looks like they've been taking pretty consistent Falcons money here because now it's at a pick. Limits are now up to 60K at the time of recording. Bucks Falcons in Atlanta. We saw some fireworks in this division series last year. Final scores were 36-30 Falcons and 31-26 Falcons. We did not see a whole lot of defense in these games. I mean, the offensive numbers for both teams are pretty crazy. On both sides. I mean, the Bucks averaged 28 points per game. Obviously, you just saw the final scores. 7.4 yards per play. That's what the Falcons offense averaged against the Bucks defense in those two games. And I mean, the Bucks averaged 6.5 yards per play themselves. Success rate 51% and 54%. Yeah, there was not a stop in sight when these two teams met last year. So I think the first question when taking a look at the Bucks this year is, does the offense take a step back without Cohen? Because obviously Liam Cohen was calling the offense last year. He's now the head coach for the Jags. We saw the Bucks offense explode last year. This was a top 5 offense. They were second in the NFL in yards per play, third in success rate. The passing attack was good with Baker Mayfield once again. The run game came out of nowhere. This is a top 5 rushing team. This offense was very, very good last year. So now we got a new play caller here, Josh Grizzard. Does the offense take a step back? Remember, Todd Bowles is a defensive guy. So I'm actually not very big on this Bucks offense. Not that the roster got worse. I mean, they're dealing with some injuries. Tristan Wirfs is going to miss the opener here at left tackle. They're going to start the season without Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan, and I don't think McMillan's coming back for a while. So Bucks are not healthy on this side of the ball. Now, you bring in Ibuka from Ohio State. So between him, Mike Evans, and Cade Otton, Baker Mayfield has targets to throw to, but without Tristan Wirfs and with a new offensive coordinator, I don't think we're going to see the same offensive explosion from Tampa Bay that we saw in the 2 games against the Falcons last year. As far as the Falcons defense, they definitely take some losses. Grady Jarrett's gone in the middle. Matthew Judon's gone. Justin Simmons is gone. They did bring in pieces to fill those spots in. I just don't know how well it'll work right away. Xavier Watts, I can't believe he went in the 3rd round. I thought he was like Kyle Hamilton type talent. It just goes to show you that watching college football just doesn't give you an inclination on who's an NFL talent, because I thought Xavier Watts was like the best safety I've ever seen in college. Dropped to the 3rd round, so I don't know shit. But Xavier Watts, like him a lot at safety. They also have Billy Bowman Jr. there at nickel. D. Alford's still there as well. He's not pictured in the graphic. He's still there. Diablo from the Raiders comes in to fill the linebacker spot. Leonard Floyd, an experienced edge rusher. So they bring in pieces to replace the pieces that left. But right away with a couple rookies, I'm not sure. I would say at least in the beginning of the season, the Falcons defense should take a small step back. I do think there's reason to be optimistic with this defense, though, moving forward. They bring in a new DC. It's Jeff Ulbrich from the Jets. Jimmy Lake was fired after just 1 year. Jeff Ulbrich coached some really good defenses there with the Jets. So maybe the new DC sparks something. I just don't know if it happens necessarily right in the opener. So in this game, I'm not really big on the Bucks offense. I'm not really big on the Falcons defense. Kind of uncertainty on both sides of the ball there. The Falcons defense wasn't particularly good last year. I actually thought the Falcons defense was better than this, to be honest. 18th in yards per play, 24th in success rate. So maybe they will be better than this by the end of the season. I don't love it to start the year. When we pull up this graphic right here, the side-by-side between the Bucs offense and the Falcons defense last year, this gap will be closer because I expect the Bucs offense to fall. I really don't think Tampa Bay is going to give us a top 5 offense again. So I expect the gap between these two units to be closer this year. Now, what about on the other side of the ball? We got the Falcons offense against the Bucs defense. Tampa Bay had no answers for this Falcons. Kirk Cousins had like 1,000 yards in these two games. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but he went nuts in both of them. The Bucs could not stop this Falcons offense at all. We just talked about it before, 7.4 yards per play in those two games. So will the Bucs defense have some better success against Atlanta this year? Bucs defense does take some losses. Linebacker KJ Britt is gone. Safety Mike Edwards is gone as well. They had Hassan Reddick, which is kind of a low risk, high reward. We know how good he can be. Obviously, the last couple of years, there was like he was holding out for a contract, didn't really play with the Jets, so who knows there. As a whole, I think the roster does get slightly worse, but I trust Todd Bowles as a defensive coach. And they also dealt with a lot of injuries on this side of the ball, specifically in the secondary. So I think even though I think the defensive roster for the Bucs is a little bit worse, I think the fact that they have a healthy secondary and Todd Bowles, I think the defense will be a little bit better. They were 18th in yards per play allowed, 23rd in success rate last year. So I think they'll be slightly better than that on the defensive side of the ball. So can the Falcons offense match the production we saw in these two games last year? And I'm going to come right out and say I'm kind of worried about this offensive line. They've still got Lindstrom and Matthews, which are solid pieces, but Drew Dahlman's gone. He's with the Bears now. And Caleb McGarry, their right tackle, is out for the season. So two of their key pieces from the offensive line are gone. Elijah Wilkinson's going to start. Ryan Newsel, I'm sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly. So I think this Falcons offensive line definitely takes a step back. And that's a concern because that was probably the strength of the team. I mean, it kind of flew under the radar. Atlanta's offensive line was really good last year. They were a top 5 run blocking unit, top 10 pass blocking unit. So I think this Falcons offensive line takes a step back. Look, as far as maybe Zach Robinson has Bowles' number. So maybe even though the offensive line takes a step back, Atlanta can still cook them. Personally, I think the wrong team is favored. I think this Bucs offense is not, like I said before, not going to be close to a top 5 unit again. I would have Atlanta laying a 1.5 rather than catching a 1.5. Has it moved actually since I wrote this? Sorry, 1 second. All right, I finally got the page up. Circa actually has this one at a pick now at the time of recording. It would be Falcons. I think Falcons should be short favorites. As of right now, I don't have a bet in the game, but I think this number is a little bit off. I don't think the Bucs offense is going to be the same this year. Bengals Browns. This one was up at 5.5. Looks like it got bought down to 5 at Circa. Limits up to 60K. We're now sitting at 5. Cincinnati, Cleveland. Bengals took both of these games last year. 21-14 in Week 7. 24-6 in Week 16. We should probably mention, though, the Week 16 game. They had Dorian Thompson-Robinson playing quarterback for Cleveland, and that might have been the worst quarterback game I've seen in a while. He did not play well. So worth mentioning that the Week 16 game, DTR was playing quarterback for the Browns. And that first game, that Week 7 game, the Bengals won 21-14, but I'm pretty sure they opened the game up with a kickoff return or had an early kickoff return touchdown. Because I remember thinking the Bengals weren't even better than the Browns during this game. I don't remember it offhand. I just remember, I think there was a kickoff return touchdown in there. Either way, it's not weird for the Bengals to struggle against Cleveland. Joe Burrow's kind of struggled against Cleveland his whole career. He's just 3-5 lifetime against the Browns. He's 3-1 in his last 4 against the Browns, so maybe that's a thing of the past. But he has struggled with this Cleveland defense. Honestly, a lot of quarterbacks struggle with this Cleveland defense. Speaking of the Cleveland defense, they weren't all that great last year. They were 23rd in yards per play, 5th in success rate, though. Good on third downs, good at getting off the field because of that pass rush. And I'm worried about this Bengals offensive line. Trent Brown is gone, but he didn't really play much last year anyway. And honestly, Mims is developing into a real nice tackle, so I'm not really worried about Trent Brown leaving. I think they're fine at tackle with Mims and Orlando Brown. It's left guard. Volson, the guy that was supposed to start, he's out for the year already. So they've got a 3rd-round pick, Dylan Fairchild, starting at left guard. A little vulnerable there. Also, Lucas Patrick comes in to play right guard, although that's a veteran, so pretty sure he'll be fine. But a couple of new guards, and one of them's a 3rd-round pick rookie. With this Cleveland defensive front, could be vulnerable. Speaking of the Cleveland defense, they did have some bad injury luck last year, and it's continued on to this year. They've already got 2 starters out for the year. Owosu Karamoa is out for the year, and Martin Emerson, who's kind of plays nickel safety for them. They're both out for the season. So some bad luck. Look, it's the NFL. It's unrealistic to think you're going to go through the season without any injuries. But to lose 2 starters on the defense before the season starts, it's just some bad luck here for Cleveland. Not to mention they lost some other pieces as well. Dalvin Tomlinson's gone. Juan Thornhill's gone. Zadarius Smith, the edge rusher's gone. Rodney McLeod retired. So they lost some pieces from this defense. They did spend their first and second round picks on the defense, specifically up the middle there. Swessinger from UCLA is a second round pick, and Mason Graham, the monster in the middle from Michigan, he was the 5th overall pick. So between that and bringing in Malik Collins, they really addressed the run defense, which I think is smart. I mean, Cleveland's always got a pass rush. They've got talent in the secondary. They could stop the run. This defense could be a problem. So I don't mind the draft picks at all. Are they able to exploit the weak Bengals offensive line or the interior offensive line right out of the gate? That's a different question, but I kind of like where Cleveland went with the draft. And if they're able to stop the run, this defense could be a problem. As a whole, though, if I'm being honest, I do think the Bengals are able to move the ball in this game. If you're going on the road to Cleveland, you want to do it in early September. So time of year wise, you hit the jackpot there. I do think there might be some rain, which is concerning for Cincinnati. But if the weather holds up, I think the offense will be able to move the ball. There's a lot of pressure on this Cincinnati team this year, and I'd be surprised if they come out slow. I mean, could you imagine the Twitter and the media if Cincinnati comes out and lays an egg and only scores like 16 points in the opener? That would be concerning. So there's a lot of pressure on the Bengals, and I think they're going to score points in this game. I know that Cleveland's usually a tough matchup for them. I know the history there, but I think the Bengals are going to come out ready. There's a ton of pressure on this unit. So I think the Bengals are going to move the ball, especially with those 2 rookies in 2 main starting spots there, making their first NFL start. I think the Bengals are going to move the ball in this game. But on the other side, I kind of think Cleveland's going to move the ball right back. I mean, I phrased that as if it was a hot take, like moving the ball in the Cincinnati Bengals defense is a hot take. Everyone could do that. But the Browns offense was terrible last year. They bring in a new OC. It's Tommy Rees, but this is still Stefanski's offense, so not as crazy of a change as other coordinators. The offensive line should be good. I'm going to use the word should. They have good offensive linemen on the roster. So theoretically, now that they're all healthy, this should be a good offensive line. But I don't know. If you didn't follow the Browns season last year, they were hurt the whole year. Literally the whole year, this offensive line was hurt. They only had one offensive lineman, the left guard there. He was the only one that played the entire season. Pretty sure they had only 2 offensive linemen play more than 12 games, I think it is. So, I mean, this offensive line was crushed all last year, and they actually have a good offensive line. So now that they're coming into the season with their entire offensive line healthy, you would think they'll get some good offensive line play. But I said that towards the end of the season, there was one game there or a couple games at the end where they finally got pretty much their whole offensive line back, and it didn't look all that great. But that could have been the season was over. I don't even remember who was playing quarterback. If it was DTR, I don't even remember. But starting fresh with a healthy offensive line here in Cleveland. Now matched up against the Bengals defense. Quick rant about the Bengals defense. I don't know what this team is doing on the defensive side of the ball at all. I don't understand anything. You fire Lou Anarumo, who, in my opinion, is one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. I mean, he was not given a ton to work with there, and they still have recorded some of the most clutch defensive playoff wins we've seen in recent years. I mean, think about what the Bengals have done over the last 5 years. They went to the Super Bowl a couple times. I think it was they went a couple times, I think. A couple playoff runs in there. Some huge wins. The headline is Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, right? If you look back at those playoff runs, there's some defensive wins in there. They went into Tennessee and shut prime Derrick Henry down to beat the Titans 19-16. They went into Buffalo, held Josh Allen to 10 points, won 27-10. Lou Anarumo has outcoached Andy Reid in big games. So I don't know how you fire this guy. I think the Colts hit a home run hiring Lou Anarumo, truly. But anyway, Lou Anarumo's out. Al Golden is in. Maybe they just needed a change of temperature here with the defensive coordinator, which makes sense. It does happen. But Al Golden's in. Question, did the Bengals defense, in terms of the roster, did it get any better? What did they address on this side of the ball? They paid Hendrickson, well-deserved. You added TJ Slayton. Okay, that's solid. Him and BJ Hill maybe shore up the run. And there were points in the season where the Bengals were playing somewhat decent defense against the run. So, okay. Logan Wilson is developing into a nice linebacker. All right. I'm not seeing how the big differences here from Cincinnati's defense. This is a bad defense last year, and I'm not seeing much on paper to indicate it should be much better. Now, the good news is, despite Cincinnati being one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year, they were still somehow better than Cleveland's offense. Regardless, I think Cleveland's going to move the ball in this game. The first time they met last season, like I said, their offensive line was absolutely crushed. The second time they met, the offensive line was still crushed, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson was playing quarterback. So now that offensive line's completely healthy, you give Joe Flacco a clean pocket and possibly some run support. Remember, they got Dylan Sampson there now. Yeah, I think Cleveland's going to move the ball, which is why when it comes to betting this game, I think it's an over for me. 47.5, an over in Cleveland. Didn't think I'd be saying that. Over 47.5. As far as a side, I think the Bengals are going to put up a big number. So I'd lean Cincinnati if you can get a minus. What can you get right now? 1 second. If you can get a -5, Cincinnati. Yeah, you can get a -5. So my picks for this game, over 47.5, Bengals -5. Dolphins, Colts. So early in the summer, the Dolphins were favored, and then the Colts were favored, and now it looks like we're back at a pick at circa limits at 60K. Miami on the road in Indianapolis, and I think this is a cool game here. I actually have a bet on this game. I know that I'm doing a lot of passing here in week 1. I actually do have a bet in this one. So we'll start with the Dolphins. It's year 4 for McDaniel. Kind of a different feel. I feel like a couple years ago, we were all like, McDaniel is a genius. This guy's so cool. Like, he is scripting up the craziest plays. And now you look at Mike McDaniel and you're like, this guy's kind of weird and he might not have a job next year. Joking, obviously, but kind of a different feel when it comes to McDaniel. I don't know if he's held in the same regard as he was a couple of years ago. I'm worried about the offensive line. Now, obviously, Tua is healthy, and we'll start with that. When Tua is healthy, the Dolphins move the ball, and that was still the case last year. It wasn't the same explosive, high-flying, 40-point-a-game type of offense that we saw a couple of years ago, but when Tua was healthy, the Dolphins averaged 5.9 yards per play and a success rate over 52%. So when Tua is healthy, the Dolphins do move the ball. Even though 24.1 points per game doesn't look crazy, they were an efficient offense when Tua was healthy in those 11 games. So heading into this year, Tua is healthy. So that's a great start. Also, Tyreek Hill is going to play. That was up in the air. He is going to play. I think it was Drew Rosenhaus that let us know that Tyreek Hill is going to play. Guy's agent is reporting his injury status. But yeah, Tyreek Hill's going to play. I think Devin Achan's going to play as well. Jalen Wright's out. So as a whole, in terms of injuries, there were some questions here. It looks pretty good. It's just going to be Jalen Wright, I think, that doesn't play for Miami. I'm worried about the interior offensive line here. They lost both guards 2 years in a row. Remember last year they had 2 new guards, Robert Hunt. I always mix those 2 guys up. But they lost both their guards again. Now, they bring in James Daniels, who is a veteran. So maybe that's a lateral move. But, I mean, they got a rookie. I think he's a 3rd-round pick starting at left guard. So not to mention Terron Armstead is no longer with the team either. So James Daniels, like I said, should be a solid addition. But I think this offensive line takes a step backwards from last season. They did have injury problems last season. So maybe if all 5 stay healthy, they can give you similar production. But I think this offensive line does take a step backwards. Now, when we're looking at the overall offensive numbers from the Dolphins, you have to take into consideration that Tua missed some time. And that Dolphins offense without Tua is like the worst thing we've ever it's crazy. It's like the worst thing we've ever seen. So you have to take that into consideration when we're looking at those numbers. But something I want to point out on this graphic, look at the Colts defense. Look at those run defense numbers. 8th in yards per carry allowed, 5th in success rate per rush. And that's important here because this Dolphins offense, it's not the deep ball, high-flying offense that it used to be. You know, Tua last year, he started 11 games. He only attempted 24 passes of 20 or more yards all season. This Dolphins offense is not throwing the ball, or I should say last year, was not throwing the ball downfield like you think. This is actually a veer and shoot. They're kind of like a TCU type misdirection type offense, quick hits. It's not really a downfield passing offense. And the reason that's important that plays directly into the strength of this Colts defense. This Colts defense had a very strong defensive front last year. They're all back. This is a very good defensive line here in Indianapolis. The weakness, at least early in the season, would probably be the secondary because they have some new pieces there. But the Dolphins don't throw the ball downfield like that. Now they can, but they weren't last year. So if the Dolphins are going to try to run the ball, give the ball to Achane in this game on the road, I think the Colts defense is going to put up a fight. And you want to know who the Colts' new defensive coordinator is? Big Lou Anarumo. I would take this guy. I call him the defensive plays in the biggest game of the year. Actually, I would take Spagnuolo and then Lou. Love this guy. So I think the Dolphins are going to struggle to run the ball here. Maybe there's some opportunities for them to take some big shots, but I think the Colts defense is going to play great in the opener. Now, on the other side, I get it. Daniel Jones is playing quarterback. I get it. You can't overlook that. He's got a pretty good supporting cast. He's got a solid offensive line in front of him. He's got Jonathan Taylor behind him. And I'm expecting Shane Steichen to come out with a really conservative game plan. Just run the football. Do not let Daniel Jones take 7-step drops and stand in the pocket with those two edge rushers. So I think that Shane Steichen's going to be very conservative here on offense and run the ball, play some defense. I think that's the type of game we're going to see out of the Colts, and I think it's going to work. Now, we don't want to overlook this Miami defense. They were very good last year. This was a top 10 defense last year, and as a whole, they probably got better. They bolstered. I mean, look at that secondary. Jack Jones is here from the Raiders, Minka Fitzpatrick, Ashton Davis, Juju Brents, who's a former Colt. They got much better on this side of the ball. Here's the thing. It's kind of all new, and there's a couple things I want to point out here. So Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, their superstar edge rushers, are back. They didn't play Phillips played in 4 games. Then he was out for the year. Bradley Chubb, I'm pretty sure, missed the entire year. So they haven't played in a year. This secondary is all brand new. They never played together before. Yeah, Minka Fitzpatrick's coming back. They never played together before, this secondary. So it's all very new. And it's the first game of the season. And who's missing from this graphic? There's one piece missing. He's 38 years old. Calais Campbell. This Dolphins defense has been strong against the run the last couple of years. Yes, he's 38 years old, but Calais Campbell is a big reason for that. You take out that anchor in the middle against the Colts offensive line and Jonathan Taylor, I think the Colts are going to run the ball on the Dolphins. And I think this Dolphins defense is going to be strong, but I think the Colts' conservative, grinded out, pain in the ass game plan is going to work against Miami, which is why I am on the Colts here. I got a money line at plus 100. I think they're short favorites now. Indianapolis. Sorry. -1, -1.5. So you could probably still get around the same thing. I got a Colts money line plus 100. That's what I'm on. I think maybe if we knew we were going to get both these teams' best fastball, then yeah, I'd say the Dolphins might be the better team. But in the opener with all those new pieces on the Dolphins defense on the road, I think the Colts are going to win this game. I'm on the Colts plus 100. I bet this. New York, Washington. This one was at 6. Looks like it's now down to 5.5 at Circa. Limits up to 60K. Giants on the road in Washington, and the Giants bring back the same exact offense. Andrew Thomas is still hurt. Well, actually, I don't know if he's officially been ruled out, but he's not going to play in this game. So the Giants bring back same offensive line. Russell Wilson is plugged in, and other than that, the same exact offense. In case you were wondering, yes, the Giants did have one of the worst offenses in the NFL last year. 30th in yards per play, 24th in success rate. So how can we expect this Giants offense to be better considering they brought back the same unit and just threw Russell Wilson in there? Well, a couple of things. Number one, the Giants offensive line was rocked with injuries last year. Their right guard, Van Roten, he's the only one who played 17 games. Andrew Thomas should be back at some point. So when he didn't play much last year either. So actually, I'm not sure how much time he missed. I don't want to misspeak. But yeah, Andrew Thomas should be back at some point, even though he's not playing in this game. So the fact that the Giants offensive line is healthy or close to healthy puts them in better shape than where they were at last year. Russell Wilson, take him or leave him. Is he an upgrade over Daniel Jones? I'm not sure. Maybe he's certainly experienced. I don't know how I feel about Russell Wilson. But something I want to point out. Instead of pointing at the Giants offense, I want to flip it around and point at the Washington defense. Look at their numbers against the rush. 28th in yards per carry, 24th in success rate. It was a magical season, kind of masked this. The lead story was Jaden Daniels, right? Superstar on the rise. we kind of swept under the rug that this was a very bad run defense last year. It was a borderline bottom 5 run defense. And the question I have, what did they do to improve in that department? Because I'm looking at the roster and I'm really not seeing it. Jeremy Chin is gone. He was second on the team in tackles. They bring in Will Harris, probably a lateral move. Bobby Wagner, the most important piece in terms of defending the run, 135 tackles last year, something like that. He's now 35 years old. So who knows if you're going to get that. I mean, he gave you a monster season last year. He's now 35. So he might be pushing it. Who knows if he's able to give you that same type of season. They didn't bring in any new pieces. Javon Kinlaw, does that solve your problems against the run? Jonathan Jones joins the defense as well. That's not a... They did add some pieces in the secondary. They also added Von Miller. So in terms of pressuring the passer, defending the pass, you could make an argument they got better there. Having Marshawn Lattimore through the offseason, right? I think they're going to be better against the pass, but in terms of stopping the run, I don't see how they improved. I think this is going to be a bad run defense once again this year. And you might think, hey, Kyle, who cares? The Giants' offense is terrible. They can't run the ball. Who cares? Well, actually, if you look at the Giants' season from last year, there were 2 games where the Giants were consistently moving the football. There are 2 games against Washington. In their 2 games against the Commanders last year, they averaged 6 yards per play, success rate over 52%. That's excellent. The Giants' offense was incredibly efficient both times they saw Washington last year. If you remember, they could have won both of those games. We'll pull it up at the end. But I think the Giants are going to hand the ball off to Tyrone Tracy, and I'm not sure Washington can stop it. I think the Giants are going to move the ball in this game, just like they moved the ball against Washington both times they saw them last year. Now, on the other side of the ball, Commanders offense, you bring in Laramie Tunsil. You got a rookie starting at right tackle. Your guard's out, though. They're missing that right guard. He's not going to play in that game. As a whole, I think this offense, I mean, Deebo Samuel, you would have to think that upgrades it somewhat. So maybe slightly better. I mean, this offense is about Jaden Daniels. And if he gives you what he gave us, if Jaden Daniels produces like he did last year, this offense is going to move the ball. But remember, that's assuming Jaden Daniels is going to give us another monster superstar season. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, he could take a step back. Sophomore slumps happen all the time. This Giants defense, though, they definitely got better. They bolstered the secondary up. Paulson Adebo's here. Javon Holland's here. The secondary is much better. In terms of the defensive front, kind of the same, but they added Abdul Carter in the draft. So in addition to Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, you now have Abdul Carter, one of the best edge rusher prospects we've seen in the draft in years. So this Giants pass rush is going to be good. Dexter Lawrence is in the middle. This Giants defense is going to be better this year. If we take a look at the gap from last year, Washington's offense 10th in yards per play, 5th in success rate. The Giants defense 28th and 23rd and 28th. I wouldn't be surprised if this gap is close. I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants defense is better than the Washington offense is this year. And like I mentioned before, I'm betting the Giants, full disclosure. I haven't bet it yet, but I can get a 6.5 right now. I think I'm going to bet it right after I'm done recording. Everyone's going to hate it. But keep in mind, let's look at last year. The Giants were terrible, right? Can we all agree? The Giants were a terrible football team last year. Washington was on a Cinderella run. They were excellent. What happened when these two teams played last year? They played in week 2. Final score was 21-18. If you remember, I had Giants money line. The reason they lost is they played the game without a kicker. The Giants scored 3 touchdowns, went for 2 all 3 times because they didn't have a kicker, missed all 3 2-point conversions, and then throughout the game, they kept going for it on 4th down because they couldn't line up for a field goal. Wild. The Giants should have won that game. And the second one, I had Washington minus 3.5 in week 9 in that second one. That was a sweat. I remember watching it. My uncle had a party that day, and I was watching at my uncle's house. I sweat that entire game. Washington minus 3.5 was one of my top bets that week. I sweat that entire game. So both times these two teams met last year, it came down to the wire. In fact, the Giants should have won one of those games. And as we move on to this year, I think the Giants got better, and I think the Commanders didn't. So plus 6.5, why wouldn't I take that? It's ugly. Give me the G, man. Giants plus 6.5. Raiders, Patriots, a lot of new pieces on both sides of the ball here. New era of Raiders football. Pete Carroll takes over at head coach. Chip Kelly is coaching the offense. As far as their offense from last year, the Raiders do bring back a lot of pieces, lose a couple pieces on the offensive line. But a couple of the receivers back, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, obviously. But the lead story here, as I'm sure you know, is Geno Smith, Ashton Genty. That's the talk of the town here. with the Raiders. New quarterback, new superstar running back to be. Curious how Chip Kelly's going to coach this team. If this is Chip Kelly of old, we should see a fast-paced offense. But Chip Kelly with Ohio State was running a slow pace last year. So curious to see how Chip Kelly's going to call these games. As a whole, just looking at the Raiders' offensive depth chart, I think it's safe to say that this offense is going to be better. I don't think anyone would argue with that. Keep in mind, the Raiders were another team that were pretty crushed with injuries on the offensive line. So they lose a couple starters from last year, but they were really injured on the offensive line last year. So they're coming into this year with a healthy offensive line, a shiny new quarterback in Geno Smith, and a superstar first-round pick running back in Ashton Genty. So I think everyone can, not to mention Brock Bowers, one of the rising superstar tight ends. So I think we can all agree. Oh, and Amari Cooper. Wow, didn't even mention Amari Cooper. I think we can all agree the Raiders' offense will be better this year. They were 28th in yards per play, 25th in success rate last year. How good it'll be is a different question, but it'll be better. What do we think about the Patriots defense? Now, at first, I was like, Vrabel takes over. This Patriots defense is going to be good. But the more I looked into it, the more I'm not sure if I think this Patriots defense is going to be good. They take some losses. Gottschall in the middle. Dietrich Wise is gone. Bentley, linebacker's gone. Jonathan Jones, Jabril Peppers. They did bring in some new pieces to fill those spots. Carlton Davis, Harold Landry, Tonga in the middle. Milton Williams, who had a great season with the Eagles last year. Spillane, the running back from the Raiders. So they're bringing some new pieces. I don't think roster-wise they're significantly worse or anything. I just don't like how there's a bunch of new pieces and a new coaching staff with this Patriots defense. I don't like that for week one. But at the same time, you could say the same thing about the Raiders offense. So I'm not really big on the Patriots defense, but opening up the season against a brand new offense in the Raiders, they could play well. Now, where I think you should be excited if you're a Patriots fan is on the other side of the ball. You look at last year's offense, that offensive line was a mess. They lose 3 starters from it, but most of those offensive line didn't even play last year because of the injuries. All of the Patriots offseason resources went here. It all went into the offense. I mean, you got your first-round pick, Will Campbell, who I'm actually hearing isn't playing well in camp. I don't know if that's a reliable source that told me that. Someone in the Discord said that he's not playing well in camp. It's a Patriots fan who said it. But it's their first-round pick there at left tackle. They bring in Garrett Bradbury from the Vikings. You bring in Morgan Moses to play right tackle. So you go from having the most injured and the worst offensive line in the NFL to what might be a pretty decent offensive line. It's not going to be a top 10, but if this offensive line is 16th in efficiency, that's a dramatic improvement from last year. You got Drake May, who's no longer a rookie. He now has a year experience. He should take a step forward. You add Steph Diggs. You add Kyle Williams. You add Travion Henderson, so you give him some new weapons to play with. This Patriots offense looks great. Now, it's not going to be an elite offense, but in comparison to what Drake May was working with last year, I think you have reason to be excited on this side of the ball if you're a New England fan. And this Raiders defense, we were talking about how the Patriots defense is brand new. This is crazy. So last year, the Raiders defense was actually pretty good under Pierce. 14th in yards per play, 11th in success rate. Look at last year's depth chart. 9 of 11 pieces are gone. 9 of 11 starters from last year's Raiders defense are gone. It's crazy. It's a brand new defense with the exception of Max Crosby and Kuntz, who actually was hurt last year. Now, the new defense, I will say, they brought in experienced pieces, which I like, which is why I think the Raiders defense can get it up and running sooner because they have veterans. Eric Stokes, Jeremy Chin, Devin White, Landon Roberts, Jermaine Pratt. I mean, these are all pieces that have multiple years starting experience. So I do think they brought in the right kind of pieces, experienced pieces. And with Vrabel a head coach, wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders defense gets their shit together sooner or later. But the opener, the first game of the year on the road, I think the Patriots are going to score some points, which is why when it comes to betting this game, I am on New England minus 2.5. I also like the over, but when I wrote this article, it was 42.5. It's now 44. So, it's actually 44.5 on DraftKings now. So I'll put over up as my pick. I missed it though. So Patriots minus 2.5, over 42.5. I actually did bet the Patriots. All right, Cardinals Saints, year 3 for Jonathan Gannon. And based on last year's numbers, this should be a favorable matchup for the Cardinals offense. I mean, they're 7th in yards per play, 9th in success rate last season, and the Saints defense 28th and 21st. So based on last year's numbers, Cardinals should not have problems moving the ball here. So did we see any changes with these two units? And when we're talking about the Cardinals offense, the answer is not at all. In fact, they're bringing back the exact same offense. Literally didn't have to change one picture in this graphic. It's exactly the same as it was last year. And Will Hernandez is still out, exactly the same as the situation last year. So the exact same offense for the Cardinals, the exact same coaching staff. So I would imagine we're going to see a very similar offense, a run-first offense, control the clock. They were having a lot of success with it. So I think we could put our finger on what we're going to expect from the Cardinals offense because it was working for them last year. So then the question becomes, have the Saints made any adjustments? Because based on last year, the Cardinals offense should be a nightmare matchup for the Saints. Their run defense was terrible. They were one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. They were actually one of the worst run defenses in the NFL the last 2 years. The thing is, last year, they did nothing to address it. And I specifically remember talking about that. Last season, I was like, the Saints have one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, and they didn't do anything to address it. This season, they did make some changes. They made some moves. They bring in Gottschall from the Patriots in the middle. That certainly helps defend the run. They also brought in two safeties to make tackles back there, Justin Reed from the Chiefs and Julian Blackman from the Colts. So they did make some moves to address their run defense. Now, does that mean they immediately become this amazing run defense? Probably not. But they do add some new pieces. And keep in mind, we're talking about a brand new coaching staff here. Now, Dennis Allen was a great defensive coach. In fact, he had this Saints defense top 5, top 10 every single year for what feels like forever. But I think Dennis Allen, his coaching style has kind of phased out because the Saints couldn't stop the run the last few years. Rewind 5-6 years, Dennis Allen was giving us a rock-solid run defense. So it was time for a change in New Orleans. They bring in Brandon Staley to coach the defense. And, I mean, he's perceived to be a great defensive mind. Didn't really see it towards the end of his Chargers tenure, but it should be a good defensive coordinator on paper, so we'll see. Are they able to stop the Cardinals' rushing attack? It's tough, but with all that experience, all the pieces they brought in are experienced. There's a ton of experience on this Saints defense. So I wouldn't be surprised if they take a pretty serious step forward this year in terms of stopping the run. Now, on the other side of the ball, we got Kellen Moore and Spencer Rattler. What are we going to expect from this Saints offense? I mean, obviously, Spencer Rattler, it didn't look good when we saw him last year. I honestly think we need to cut him some slack. Yeah, his numbers look terrible, but if you remember, the Saints offensive line was wrecked. He was pressured on over 37% of his dropbacks on the season. That's a lot. So he was constantly under siege, and for a rookie making his NFL debut, it's not an ideal situation. The Saints did address that. They drafted Kelvin Banks Jr., 9th overall. Huge draft pick in terms of bolstering the pass protection. Trevor Penning is going to miss the opener, which sucks. That was their left tackle last year. Or I think he might have been right tackle last year, but they shifted him over to left guard. This offensive line, now that it's healthy and they add Banks, it's going to be much better this year. Now, missing Penning in the opener sucks, but still, it's a lot better than what Spencer Rattler had last year. And he kind of got a nice draw here in the opener up against the Cardinals defensive line. Or at first, it looks like a nice draw. The reason I say that is last year, the Cardinals had one of the worst defensive lines in the NFL. They were 26th in pressure rate, 30th in pass rush grade. Here's the thing. The Cardinals have completely changed their defensive line. They addressed this. I mean, they brought in Josh Sweat from the Eagles. They brought Calais Campbell back, who, yeah, he's 38 years old, but he was still damn good with the Dolphins last year. They brought in Dalvin Tomlinson from the Browns. So they completely revamped their defensive line. And Darius Robinson, by the way, that's their first-round pick last year. So this Cardinals defensive line is going to be significantly better this season. Honestly, it's going to be significantly better right out of the gate. Where the Cardinals are weak defensively is corner, because two of their corners are starting the season injured, and you got guys like Will Johnson starting, the corner from Michigan. You got young, inexperienced corners playing in this game for the Cardinals. So that's the weakness of this Cardinals defense right now. Can Kellen Moore and Spencer Rattler exploit it? I'm going to say probably not. Give me the Cardinals -6.5. I haven't bet it yet, but I'm honestly considering it. Cardinals -6.5. Thanks for watching. Like I said, live show 11 a.m. Eastern time. If you're able to make it, would love to see you in the comments. Yeah, let's have a fun week 1, and we'll have our eyes peeled for those week 2 lines opening.